Yo, it's me, DDP, and you're watching Count It Out with my boys, Mike and Tyler. Stay tuned and feel the bang.
You are listening to Count It Out with Mike and Tyler.
Well, we are live, pals, and welcome to another edition of the Bill Apter Seal of Approved Counted Out with Mike and Tyler. My name is Tyler. I am joined, as always, by my good friend, the one and only Mike. But, Mike, we have a very special guest today, don't we?
Yes, sir. Uh,
Some
th this is all you, man. You bring this guy in. I'm
some
proud of you for this
people,
one.
some people, they would call our guest today marvelous. Other people, they might call him a bad man. But his brand new book, Bad to Be Good, the inspiring story of a wrestling wild man, is out now, and it is a cannot miss read. We have today former WWE Intercontinental Champion and three-time WCW TV Champion, Johnny B. Bad, aka Marc Mero. Mr. Mero, thank you so much for being here today.
Tyler, Mike, thanks for having me, guys. I've been looking forward to this, and man, let's just get into it.
You
Yeah.
are a bucket list guest for us, sir. We are both very big fans of all the work you've done inside of the ring and outside of the ring, and we want to try to touch base on a little bit of all of it today. But let's start with the big project that's out now. I have it in my hands right here. It is your brand new book on the green screen. Of course, that's being troublesome. Now there it is. Mark.
There.
It is out now, and I would just love to know, why was this the right time for the book to come out, and how was the process of reliving all these memories to get this book out?
Wow, it's a lot of questions right there, and I'm going to answer every single one of them. Okay. First of all, this is it's been years in the process. I've always wanted to write. I wrote my other book called How to Be the Happiest Person on the Planet, gosh, 14 years ago, and I've always wanted to write a story about my life. And it was not only perfect time, but it was when I met Ben Veal. I was in the UK doing an autograph sign. I met Ben Veal, who's an award-winning writer. And we just got talking, and he said, "Man, why don't you write your book?" And I said, "You know what? I'm ready to do it." And he says, "I'd love to do it. I'd love to be your co-writer." And we just hit it off as friends. And then we started talking on Zoom for hours at a time and sharing stories and reliving moments, that were just exhilarating and beautiful. And then also reliving moments that were very sad and heartbreaking. But I think anyone that's gone through the loss of a loved one, a broken heart, failed dreams, things in life that just didn't go the way we hoped they would have gone, are going to really enjoy this book, because it is really about overcoming adversity. Because you may not realize that your current trial could be your future testimony. And I just leave it with this amazing ability to reinvent myself, to not give up on hope. But there's a part of my book where I really did give up, and I was about to end it all. And I look back on that part of my life as changing everything, becoming an inspirational speaker. I mean, when I was wrestling, WWE, the WWE schedule was, crazy, 200 something cities a year. And I get into speaking, and I've been doing this. This was my 19th year speaking,
Wow.
averaging 230 events a year. So it was incredible to go from a point in my life. And I think that's why people are going to enjoy reading this, because I think we all get to a place in our life that maybe isn't so good right now, kind of in the valley of life. And this is about climbing up to the mountaintop, man. And I hope anyone that reads it will feel that in their heart, and then see so many letters from people that changed their life because of the testimony and because of what I went through.
Now you're very open about the ups and downs in your life in this book, and when I ask these questions about your book, I try not to give away too much, because I really do want the readers to read this book, because as someone, I'm almost finished it right now. I'm coming towards just a little bit more than the halfway point of it here. I've been inspired by a lot of things, because I've had a pretty rough couple of months as well, and just reading your story is uplifting. Were there any parts for you that were kind of difficult to go back and think about as this whole process came, of the flooding of emotions, or is it just something that, with your speaking that you're kind of used to and you just wanted to get the story out there?
I think anytime you talk about the rock bottom part of your life and then realizing rock bottom had a basement. And that was when I decided I wanted to end it all. And to realize that someone as strong as me and as positive as me can get to that point in life, it made me realize that, man, almost anyone can get to a point in life where they just feel like giving up. But then it's overcoming that adversity. It's about climbing out, crawling before you can walk and walk before you can run, but never giving up hope. And I think when you walk with hope in your heart, you'll never walk alone. And I think reliving that moment and that time of depression, anxiety, drug abuse, the combination of all that led to a warped mind. Someone I was thinking things that a normal person would never think of doing. And but getting out of it, getting completely off drugs. I mean, I think about that. I have not touched a drug since 2003. So we're talking about 22 years
That's
drug free.
incredible.
And being addicted to drugs, but never going to rehab. Not that I'm against rehab. I'm all for anyone going to rehab. But it was that point in my life where I tell you, I just got down on my knees. I asked God to change my life. And I really believed he would, because I couldn't get any lower. I didn't know where I would go from this point. And slowly, man, I lost my fortune from wrestling through bad mistakes, terrible financial decisions, partying all the time, flying my friends all around with me, and it just spending money. And then realizing that I'm broke and I got to get a job. And I remember my first job, I got a job at Gold's Gym as a personal trainer. And I'll never forget people walking into Gold's Gym and going, "Oh my gosh, Marc Mero, what are you doing here?" I go, "Well, I work here." They go, "You work at Gold's Gym?" It was very humbling at first, but I loved inspiring other people. This is where I got it. I started getting this real bug for helping others. There was like a wall of fame at the Gold's Gym. And we had a little studio there that was personal training. There's like kind of a wall of fame where people that got results or muscle gain or lost weight or whatever it would be, these amazing results. And there's like, maybe a top 10 on there. And I slowly getting all the pictures of my clients, like filling that wall up, that they're trained by Marc Mero. This one's trained by Marc Mero. This one. And so everybody wanted to start training with me. And I really enjoyed that part. Not that I'm a great trainer. I really feel like I'm a really great motivator, like inspiring people, and where people like they more believe in you than they do themselves. But when you get that to switch in somebody and they start believing themselves, man, they can accomplish anything. And that's a beautiful thing about inspiring other people. So anyways, to make a long story short, I decided to open up my own personal training studio just down the street from Gold's Gym. And I took about 3 or 4 trainers with me, and we opened this little personal training studio, and it just took off. It was like everybody wanted, and I was on the radio a lot and doing I was training a lot of the radio personalities in the Orlando area. So the word got out very fast about me as a personal trainer. But then I get a call from Melbourne High School football coach. And he said to me, he goes, "Hey, Marc, do you mind coming over and talking to the players? Just inspiring before the season starts." I thought, yeah, that sounds like that'd be fun, So I go in there, and they got the team all sitting in this little auditorium they had there. And I just started talking about, staying away from drugs and looking back on your life and saying, I gave it my all. I don't leave anything on the table. Like, would you want to give it your all out there in that field and not look back and go, man, I could have done better or could have tried harder or whatever it would be. Anyways, eventually after the presentation, I started getting like emails through Facebook. Was real big with kids back in, what was it, 2007? So, they started saying, "Oh my gosh, that really changed my life. That really inspired me, Well, unbeknownst to me, that football coach called another school's football coach and said, "Man, we just had the kids listen to Marc Mero. It was awesome." He goes, "Well, the heck, instead of having the football players, let's let the whole school hear Marc Mero." And lo and behold, my speaking career took off. And then Diamond Dallas Page is one of my closest friends, and he lives 20 minutes down the road from me here in Atlanta. And before I lived in Atlanta, I've been here for going on 4 or 5 years in Atlanta. But before I lived here in Atlanta, I used to live in Orlando, but I would do schools in Atlanta. When I fly into Atlanta, I would stay with Diamond Dallas Page. And I was doing schools in the area, and Diamond Dallas Page has the whole YRG workout, yoga. It's just amazing what he does with people. And you guys know the stories of people, wrestlers that he's changed their life. Anyway, so I would stay with Dallas. And he said, "Hey, do you mind if the guys come down and film you at this school?" I said, "Sure," because we get a photo and video release at most all schools, so we could take pictures with the kids and stuff. And the kids love to see that on social media. So they come down and they film me. And Dallas calls me about a week later. He goes, "Hey, bro, the guys put together this 5-minute video. Do you mind if we put it up?" He goes, "Hey, you never know, it might go viral." And that video just took off. And in fact, that month that video took off, millions and millions of people saw that video. We had 3,000 booking requests at our offices in Maitland, Florida. And so we were going all over the world. Now, when I say going all over the world, I'm talking about I spoke at schools in Russia, Guatemala. I mean, almost every single state now, Canada. It's just been crazy. Been over to Puerto Rico. It's just been an amazing ride. And you can just tell by me talking about how excited I get about my school program and how many lives it's changed and saved from kids and parents that wrote to me, said that you saved their son or daughter's life. And that's the biggest blessing I could ever receive from this.
Beautiful.
You said a word that really resonated with me. You said inspiring. And we've been lucky enough right here on the show to have some very inspiring people talk to us. We just had Brian Blair come on to talk about all the great stuff he does with the Cauliflower Hour Club. Your friend Diamond Dallas Page has been right here to discuss DDP yoga. Other than your friend DDP, because obviously I'm sure he had a lot to do with it, but was there anybody else in the business that you saw using their experiences to help people and you said, "Man, I think I can do that"?
It was never someone that I particularly saw. I mean, obviously, Dallas and I, we've been friends for over 30 years, and we both got into business very late. I mean, right. I got in when my first year under contract I was 31. Dallas was like 35. And we both were like, rookie of the year and MVP and all these great things that happened. But, I don't really remember seeing other people ahead of me in the wrestling. Now, after I got out of wrestling, I've seen other wrestlers that really are inspirational now, like Lex Luger, Sting. The list goes on and on. I mean, superstar Billy Graham, before he passed away, was a friend of mine, and gosh, what an inspiring guy he was. He rendered this beautiful portrait that I have in my house that he painted for me that I will cherish forever.
You did mention the name Lex Luger there, and I'd love to talk a little bit about that. We just saw Lex get inducted in the WWE Hall of Fame. He wrote one of the forewords in your book there. Do you think that maybe we could see Marc Mero be the next person or one of the next people to get into that Hall of Fame or a Legends deal or something like that? Has there been any discussions of anything like that?
Unfortunately, there hasn't been, and I certainly would welcome that. But I really look at legacy in life. It's never going to be what I did so much in wrestling, but or how much money I was able to make, or how big my house was, or what kind of car I drove. But I really want my legacy to be the difference I was able to make in other people's lives. Don't get me wrong, if that opportunity ever comes that I'm inducted into the Hall of Fame or a Legends deal, I would certainly welcome that. And I would really hope that happens sometime. I would welcome WWE to work with me on their school program. I mean, they have kind of a program, Be a Star, but it's not really where, you could send a wrestler over and kids just get excited because he's a wrestler, but you've got to share a story that touches someone's heart to change their mind. And that's what my program does. And that's why we're so successful. And that's why I've been able to do it for 19 years.
You can't talk about inspiration without talking about influence. And a man that I think had a lot of influence on you in your early careers, man, we need to talk about today. Could you give us any stories about your relationship with Dusty Rhodes?
Absolutely. With this podcast wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for Dusty Rhodes. Here I was, a guy that's making, and I remember this specifically because I made $23,000 digging pools in Sarasota, Florida, and going to the gym and working out and stuff. But what happened was I was sitting in front of the television, and we were just partying, drinking, just having fun with a bunch of my friends. And one of my buddies, he had the remote control for the television. He's flipping through the TV channels, and all of a sudden he landed on professional wrestling. And I remember looking at that television. Now, remember, I was a former boxer, very successful, for junior hockey player, very successful, first team all-star in football, first team all-star in hockey. So I was always a really good athlete growing up. But remember, this is 10 years later, drug abuse, everything, but I would still go to the gym and make sure my body looked good. And we were sitting in front of the television, and I'll never forget. I go, hey, whoa, stop it there. Let me see this. And as we're watching wrestling on television, I'll never forget this. I go, hey, guys, I can do that. My buddies busted out laughing. I think that on TV at the time was like the Road Warriors. They got traps coming from their ears. You know what I mean? And they go, yeah, are you kidding me? Those guys will pick you up over their head and throw you right out of that ring. I said, no, man, I'm telling you, I can do that. My other buddy goes, Mark, you're 30 years old. What do you do? Start a pro career now? And I just remember saying those two words. I just said, I believe. And those two words, I use at every presentation. I believe, because you have no idea the power you give yourself when you believe in you. Because there's a lot of negative people out there. And I'm sure you guys have experienced it. Oh, you guys will never do a successful podcast. You'll never go to college. You'll never do this or do that. And I'll tell you why people tell you that you can't do it is because they can't do it. So I'm telling anyone that's listening, don't give up on your dreams and goals. You're not defined by someone else's opinion. I mean, guys, think about it. How many success stories do we have to watch or see on social media before we go out there and make our own? You either build your own dreams or you work for someone to build theirs. So my question to anyone that's listening, how bad do you really want it?
Absolutely. And with that great relationship that you have with Dusty as well, was it really special for you to get to work so much with Dustin as well in the future? You guys have the big WrestleMania mixed tag match and
Yes. Well, let me go back to Dustin just for a few minutes because there's some of my greatest memories. And I'll get to Dustin too, because Dustin is such a wonderful person. Anyone that knows, he's one of the funniest guys too, man. I tell you, his sense of humor is, I used to love when you were in the same locker room or something, because he was such a character, it just was funny. But anyways, getting back to Dusty, when Dusty first came to me with this character, the Johnny B. Bad character, and, here I am, a former boxer from New York, and all of a sudden I got to be this, effeminate person from Macon, Georgia, So it was a stretch for me, So Dusty, who is the most flamboyant guy ever, he would meet me earlier at the matches, and he'd work with me on how to walk and talk like he perceived as Johnny B. Bad would. So he would say, now do this. I want you to walk up to that microphone and you say, I'm so pretty. I should have been born a little girl. I said, Dusty, oh my gosh. And it's like, I'm so pretty. I should. He goes, no. Do it like this. I'm so pretty. I should have been born a little girl. I said, girl. So him and I would get laughing because it was so silly, but that's what he perceived this character to be at that time, So we would have so much fun. I'll never forget, we're just hugging each other, laughing sometimes when he's working. And then it became more like the Muhammad Ali character. I'm a bad man, and we just really created an iconic character. And then I started really, my first year, the first year contract is about 75 grand. And on top of, pay-per-view revenue or whatever, merchandising, you might make 100 grand your first year, which, seems like a lot of money, but in professional wrestling, it really is not a lot of money. But I would use all that money to invest back in myself. Started buying all the gimmicks, the best costumes. In fact, Sandra Gray, who is renowned now in professional wrestling for making costumes, she was the first one. We put an ad in the paper and just said, looking for a costume designer. And she was making costumes for like little kids dancing, dancers and stuff. So she never made a wrestling thing. She met me and she just went crazy with her amazing imagination with the capes and we just kept getting more and more extreme. Then, shooting the Bad Blaster and confetti and frisbees and the kiss that don't miss and one thing after another. And then it just became a fun character. So they had to turn a baby face like in 4 to 6 months, I think I
Gotcha.
came coming out, and they turned a babyface right away, which unfortunately left me without Teddy Long, because I really enjoyed working with Teddy Long. I mean, he put on the hand mitts, and I'd box him, and we'd do the kiss that don't miss, and we do all that dancing in the ring with him. We had so much fun together. But now let me get to Dustin, okay? So Dustin, not only a great person, but and God bless him with his sobriety and what he's doing to help other people now. You talk about an inspiration. That guy's an inspiration. But anyways, I decided that I needed to come up with a finishing move, because I didn't have a finishing move in WWE. I remember, like, by the first time I ever had to be wrestling, I was wrestling Kane, who was back then was Isaac Yankem. And so that was my first match wrestling him. So, and he's another great big man. So anyways, my finishing move in that match was like a sunset flip off the top rope. I think it was something, nothing happening, Anyways, I wanted to come up with something really good. So I found that I saw like Jushin Thunder Liger do a shooting star press when I went over to Japan. I remember going, that is the coolest move, man. How, the reverse flip and land on the guy. And so I would practice that. I never had anybody to practice with, so I would go to my little daughter Mariah's gymnastic school, and all the kids would be doing their little flips and stuff. And I would ask the coach. I said, "Hey, do you mind if I just pull like a pommel horse and a crash pad over the side and try and do some wrestling moves?" And they're like, "Sure, go right ahead. You're out of I was out of their way. They're doing floor exercises. So they're on a kind of a different part of the gymnasium." And so I get in the pommel horse, and of course you jump up now. A full gainer or a shooting star plus in diving is really you land on your feet, or you land diving into the pool, not flat on your stomach. You know what I mean? So here I am on the pommel horse doing the shooting star press, I call it the wild thing, and landing on my hands and knees on the crash pad. Well, the kids started all gathering, watching me, but they're chuckling because gymnastics, you lay on your feet, you put your hands up in the air, and they see me getting excited about landing on my stomach. Anyways, so now let's go back to SummerSlam. I have never done it on a human being before, okay? I've only done it on a crash pad. That's all I've ever done. But I was always a pretty good diver when I was a kid. I'd go to the diving boards and do doubles and 2.5s and all kinds of crazy stuff. In fact, the Mero salt was where you stand front, turn, and flip backwards. That was something I came up with when I was a kid, just goofing around on a diving board. So here I am, SummerSlam. I'm wrestling Dustin. And I said, "Hey, Dustin, I got a new move that I want to see if it'd be okay to try with you." Because I always ask permission, I never just do something. He goes, "Well, what is it?" And I go, "Can we go to the ring?" So we went to the ring. We were kind of go over in our matches at SummerSlam is in Indianapolis. And I go, "So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up with my shoulders. I'm going to kind of Samoan drop you near the corner. I'm going to go to the top, and I'm going to do a flip, but it's a reverse flip, and land on my on my hands and knees." And he goes, "Well, how do you land on me?" I go, "No, we're going to land chest to chest." He just looks at me and goes, "Just go for it." That's all he did. There was no trying it, no practicing it. So the first time I ever did a shooting star plus or the wild thing was at SummerSlam on Dustin Rhodes, on Gold Dust, actually, at that time. Yeah. And he took it like a champ. And luckily I landed perfectly. Nobody got hurt. And I've never, ever hurt anybody, except the only one time when I was wrestling Draws on a pay-per-view. The finisher was my wild thing, and my knee kind of hit his face. But I got to tell you something. That guy's one of the toughest son of a guns. I was like so apologetic after the match. I go, "Man, I'm really sorry. I don't know if I over-rotate. I don't know if I moved too far over." He goes, "What are you talking about?" I go, "It hit you right in the face." He goes, "Oh, I didn't feel nothing." It's like, no big deal, Just a tough guy, but also very, very missed. Very nice guy.
I grew up in Northern Ontario, Canada, where our wrestling was very limited. We got, Raw on Tuesday, the next day, and very little WCW, zero Japan, zero Mexico. So the very first time I ever saw the shooting star press was when you did it at SummerSlam.
Okay.
And 30 years later, I'm still calling that thing the Wild Thing. It doesn't
You
matter
know,
if Billy Kidman's do it, doesn't matter. That thing's the Wild Thing to me and always will be. I love
well,
that.
thank you. I turned 65 in just a few weeks, and of course, every year I've been going to my brother's dock. He's got a dock that's like 20 feet high, and of course, I get up there and do the Mero Salt. I do the Wild Thing,
That's amazing.
just to say I can still do it.
Yeah. Speaking of 96, we've talked about this at nauseum on this show. That's a stretch of WWF that's very near and dear to my heart. I love 96 in wrestling. The new generation era, which is when you came into WWF, that's some of my favorite stuff. And you made your on-screen debut, at least, on the biggest stage of them all. You come into WrestleMania 12. Um, you know, that's kind of crazy. You finish up as Johnny B. Bad, you're almost immediately signed to WWF. Vince obviously saw something really special in you, brought you over, brings you in on WrestleMania Day. Can you bring us through that day? What's the atmosphere like when you're coming on for the very first day job? It's day one of a new job, and it's the most important day of the year.
Well, the I guess the challenging thing about that was this new character, Wild Man Marc Mero, was a character that I never thought I would have to, I never knew of. In other words, we thought we could do something similar to Johnny B. Bad, but back then the lawsuits were going back and forth. Guys were jumping ship. So Vince didn't want to have nothing to do with even anything that resembled that. So I just thought, leave it to creative. They'll come up with something with me. And I'll never forget, now remember, Vince just gave me the first ever guaranteed contract in WWF history. Okay. So
Exactly.
we broke the glass ceiling right there.
Yeah.
And then he gave me the big signing bonus that I asked for. And he let me take my wife on the road with me. Now, those were things that were unheard of back then. So here I am coming in. So I'm just going to trust them. They're going to come up with something really cool. And I'll never forget. So Vince flies me to meet with creative. And we're in creative, and they got pictures drawn of me in this new Wild Man Marc Mero costume persona. And I'll never forget, Vince goes, "What do you think of Wild Man Marc Mero?" And I'm thinking, I'm going, "What's a wild man?" And he goes, like, "Can you do a Tarzan yell?" And right then I go, "Oh no."
Uh-oh.
First of all, I don't got a very strong voice at all. My voice crackles like I can't yell. And so I was really honest. I go, "Vince, I can't do a Tarzan yell." I mean, he's thinking of something like what Sting would do, or Ric Flair or something. I guess he's thinking along those lines, like this Tarzan yell. I said, I really don't think I can do that. And he goes, "Okay, well," and I said, "Well, what is wild? I'm like, am I from a jungle? Where am I from? What is this character? I got to tell you, I never really resonated with it, like with the whole the big eyes and do all this. I never really got it, And I think when you don't get it, the fans don't get it. Now Johnny B. Bad was just a fun character, you know what I mean? It's like I come out there, I'm going to a party with Johnny B. Bad, so everybody's in on the gag. This Wild Man, it was like a little stretch for me, but I'm still very athletic. I'm still can do moves in wrestling that people go, "Oh, that was cool," So I was able to get by with it, And of course, then you're bringing out this beautiful woman, my wife Sable at the time, bringing her out. I mean, who cares about how good I can wrestle? Look at that hot chick at ringside. So it was challenging at first, and then they put the IC title on me, and then unfortunately I blew out my knee and I'm out for 8 months. And that's when they changed it over to realize that the Wild Man Marc Mero gimmick wasn't getting over the way they hoped for, or I hoped for. And they changed it to Marvelous Marc Mero, which was kind of a fun character because now I'm a heel. No matter what I can do, as long as I'm berating or being mean to Sable, people are going to hate my guts. And that's what worked for us.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You have a beautiful title over your shoulder there, the WCW television title. Your name always comes to my mind when I think about that title. You refer to it in your book as what the boys called the workhorse title in WCW because you're on TV every week. You also got to hold the Intercontinental title, as you just mentioned, which was also the workhorse title in the WWE. Is that something you take a lot of pride in, that both of the major wrestling companies in North America looked at you as a guy who in the ring is that workhorse that will deliver every time?
Well, I don't know if they felt that same way, but I certainly did. And I tell you, every time I wrestled, I always wanted to give it my all. I wanted to always have. I remember Dallas Page and we opened up many pay-per-views together. We wrestled each other many, many times. And Dallas is one of the three guys that I've wrestled, upwards in the hundreds to 200 times, because we're together so much. And of course, Stone Cold Steve Austin and Triple H are the other two that I wrestled hundreds of times because we were both in WCW and WWE together. But I remember Dallas and I would just work on our matches, and we always thought to ourselves, we want to steal the show. We want the best match. And we had some really good opening matches on almost every pay-per-view we did. We really did well together. And because we wanted to shine. We wanted to make that title the workhorse title of the company. And it was. I mean, you're defending it all the time, and you're, defending it against great wrestlers. I mean, think about the guys I got to wrestle against. Eddie Guerrero, I was one of the greatest in-ring performers ever. I'm telling you, I don't know if there's a move Eddie couldn't do. Yeah. He made you shine because he was so talented, So Lex Luger, Lex being a friend of mine, that we exchanged that belt 3 times back and forth together, so it was and couldn't be more honored to leave that company and drop it to him to take it over from there. But never knowing that Lex would be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame and that Diamond Dallas Page would be inducting him. And here's the 2 guys that wrote my forward to my book,
That's
so
right.
great.
You're talking about the wrestlers that you wrestled for these titles. Just to win that title, you won a tournament by going over Stone Cold Steve Austin, Owen Hart, and Ron Simmons. Yeah. That's a who's who in that era of wrestling right there. That's insane to me. I want to go back to your to the start of your WWF career for a minute. We talked about WrestleMania. I want to go right to the very next night where you made your in-ring debut. You already mentioned you took on WWE Hall of Famer Isaac Yankem.
I don't think he mentioned that in his Hall of Fame speech.
On that same night, you were the only person to make your in-ring debut. We as fans got to see Mankind for the very first time. Was there any kind of backstage camaraderie between you and Mick being, the new guys that night, or was it kind of business as usual?
No, never realizing it at the time, because Mick and Stone Cold, they signed their contracts right before I got there, and they got what they call, Vince would call it the opportunity. It was you get paid on how well the house draws, the venue draws. If there's 10,000 people, you're going to make more money if there's only 3,000 people. But it was very difficult, so we weren't drawing really big crowds at that time. Mm-hmm. And here I come in with this big guaranteed contract, signing bonus, and it rubbed a lot of the guys the wrong way. Didn't really realize it at the time. And never really thought about it. Just like, that's what I asked for. I wasn't going to come unless I got what I asked for. I already had a good guaranteed contract at WCW, not leaving it unless I'm getting a bigger contract and better exposure. And that's what I thought I was going to get, but never realizing until later on how, I guess, despised I was by some of the other wrestlers. Maybe looking back and understanding that what they were going through at the time. But, Mick and I are great friends now. And man, I love Mick Foley and what he does. And he loves his fans, man, and to see a guy that's given his body, his life to professional wrestling, and then still gives back to fans and does so much charity work. People don't even realize how much charity work Mick Foley does, because he doesn't go and brag about it, talk about it all the time, but he does a lot of wonderful things. And, he said some things about me in his book that he actually wrote to me one day and apologized for that. And that's where I really saw the character of Mick Foley, that, we all make mistakes, man. I've done some stupid ass things, and then I've had to go back and apologize to people. But to see Mick feel like he needed, and I never held anything against him. I always liked Mick Foley, but there were other guys that said some things about me that didn't feel I was talented enough to deserve what I was given at WWF at the time. And I understand. I mean, everybody has their opinion, and I respect that, and that's their thing.
Well, that's kind of a good segue to my next question, because you go straight into a program with Triple H. And Triple H, let's be honest, I don't know whatever happened to that guy. I think he might still be in the business, but he as well as his friends in the clique had a bit of a reputation for not being the nicest guys to the people coming in. However, you already had a bit of a relationship with Triple H. You worked with him in WCW. You already knew him. So did that help at all? Did you guys kind of click when he came in, or was he a bit different now that he's a made man in WWF?
Well, a lot of people don't realize that the first title Triple H ever won was off of me. Was the Intercontinental belt with the help of Mr. Perfect that evening that they took the belt away from me. But having a relationship with Triple H in WCW, not that we were ever like great friends or anything, but we wrestled each other so many times. And again, he was very professional. He always wanted to have great matches. And of course, when we wrestled in the WWE, he wanted the same thing. So there's I never felt the animosity. I wouldn't say we tolerated each other. We weren't friends. We didn't go out having a drink after the matches or anything like that. But remember, I came in there with my wife, and this is where I can even look back and say to myself, I can see where people could think I'm aloof or not easy to talk with or whatever, because here I am with my wife, who never wrestled, never had anything to do with wrestling, and I'm kind of very protective of her. We're always going to the gym together. We're going everywhere, driving with just her and I. We're not taking other wrestlers with us. We're just doing our own thing. So we're kind of, I can see where people see we're aloof, and then we're in the catering room and we're kind of sitting by ourselves, and I could look back and say, wow, that was a mistake. Because I remember when I was in WCW, with the guys all the time. We're on the road laughing and having fun and, going out after and going to dinners together. Never had that with WWE. And that probably hurt me a lot there also.
As we start to wind down here, a couple more questions we'd love to sneak in with you. Did you have a lot of fun getting to go back and become Johnny B. Bad again after all those years when you run with TNA Wrestling? I thought that was so cool to see you pop up there and get to revive that character again.
Well, I think the problem there was, remember, I had my hair cut real short. I didn't look like the Johnny B. Bad from old. And so it was fun to give it one last hurrah type thing, and have some fun with it. But remember, I'm up in my 40s at this time, 40s age-wise. I think I was like 40, 42 or 43. And, you start losing a step. And last thing I want anyone to remember me, or that I wasn't the athletic person I was back then when I was Johnny B. Bad, because I don't know if I've ever seen anybody throw a sunset flip as far as I used to throw them. WCW. Right. I remember wrestling guys like I wrestled Arn Anderson, and he goes, "How far you want me out when we do sunset flip?" I go as far as you want. I'll reach you.
And I think it's also safe to say Johnny B. Bad probably has one of the greatest theme musics of all time in the history of wrestling.
Absolutely.
I would love to actually ask you about one more big night in your career too. We all remember the famous Austin 316 promo. You wrestled Steve earlier in that night. You guys had a fantastic match. The big visual of his bloody mouth coming up. What do you remember about the iconic Austin 316 night?
Well, I mean, obviously, it's funny because I did Steve's podcast, and he compliments me for that. It would never have happened if I didn't kick him in his mouth. So, but you know what? Steve's just an amazing guy. What he has done has been incredible. What a match we had, win or lose. It was a great match at King of the Ring. And that was really the first time I really got to show what I could do, and that WWE could really use me in a main event bout, and especially wrestling Steve, going toe to toe with him for, how long the match was. But I remember we did a move where he flipped me over his shoulder, but I landed on my feet and I jump up and hook him under the arms and pull him back for a pinfall. But unfortunately, my foot came through and kicked him in the mouth. I think he got like 14 stitches. So instead of going right after and wrestling Jake, he had to go get stitched up. So it was in that time that Jake cut that promo that never would have happened. And then of course Steve Austin then came up with his famous Austin 316.
Absolutely, absolutely. Mike, do you have one more you want to ask Mr. Mero here before we start to take it home?
I do not, and I'll tell you why. Because Mark, we finish every show with the same question, and it's always Tyler who asks it. And of all our guests, I don't know if there's anybody I'm looking forward more to hearing answer this question than you. And I think we got to give you the time to answer it properly, because I think you'll have a lot to say. So Tyler, take it home.
All right. Well, first of all, Mark, I want to thank you again for taking all the time to do this today. I always know it's a great interview, and I say this when I don't read my questions that I have written down. When the conversation just flows, I feel like we barely scratched the surface today, and that's a great thing. If you guys want to hear the rest of Mark's journey, pick up the book, Bad to Be Good. It's out now everywhere. So, Mark, the last question I like to ask everybody before we end the interview. When you look back at your entire wrestling career and everything that you've accomplished, both inside the ring, outside the ring, do you have any moments that you personally look back on and they just make you smile? It could be a fan interaction, it could be a moment with family, it could be a moment in the ring, just some moments for you that you look back on, you're like, man, that makes me so happy to think about that I did that.
That's a great question. There's many moments that really have touched my heart, but I think when I look back on my career, I think winning my first title against Steven Regal, and I dedicated to Mama Be Bad, and it was just such a moment. And people don't understand that even though it's predetermined and we know we're going to win, it's to know that a company feels strong enough to allow you to carry something so prestigious and that you're worth it. And I wanted to make that world television title really be worth it. And it felt so special to me. It felt like like when I won the gold medal in the Empire State Games, or winning the New York State Golden Gloves, like winning that tournament like that. It was the same feeling of accomplishment. So whenever I see a picture of that, or someone sends a video clip of me of that, or just the thought of it, it definitely makes me smile and makes me blessed that I was able to do that, I was able to wrestle some of the greatest wrestlers. I think I was in wrestling at probably one of the greatest periods, the Attitude Era, the Monday Night Wars, just being in, you look around your locker room and there's, the Undertaker, there's Stone Cold Steve Austin, there's Triple H, there's D-Generation X, Mick Foley, the list goes on and on, Ric Flair. And you just think about all these guys that I got to wrestle. So the combination of all that brings a smile to my face. And the greatest thing is that I really love the fans. Like when I go to these wrestling conventions now, I love meeting people. The two greatest commandments that God gave us is love God and love people. And I do both.
Absolutely. And as a longtime fan of yours, I will say to any fans listening, if you want to see just a small taste of what Mr. Mero can do in the ring, one of my personal favorite matches, Brian Pillman, Fall Brawl. Look it up. You will not be disappointed. I promise you guys.
Match.
I promise you. Mark, this has been such a pleasure.
Thank you guys so much. Mike, Tyler, I hope to be on again sometime.
Oh,
okay?
we would love to have that. Like I said, we barely scratched the surface with you today. Pick up the book right now, Bad to Be Good. I got it in 24 hours on Amazon. It is available everywhere. You will not be disappointed. I've read many wrestling books over my years. This one is one of my favorites. I have not been able to put it down. It's been fantastic. Mike, go ahead and take us home, my friend.
Folks, do all the stuff I tell you every week. Hit those subscribe buttons, YouTube, Spotify, subscribe, like, give us a review, and then go over, do the same thing for our friend Marc Mero. Mark, what are your socials?
You just type my name in any of the socials. Marc Mero. YouTube is the Marc Mero, and of course, Mark is Marc Mero. Facebook, you just type my name and you'll find me easily. Marc Mero on Instagram, and what's the other one? TikTok. Yes, they do
Very good.
TikTok also. And a special thank you to my co-writer, Ben Veal.
Absolutely.
Of course.
He did an amazing job on my book. I mean, I can share the stories with him on a Zoom every night. We speak for about an hour, but it was him that put those stories into words to make them jump out of the book, and I can't thank him enough. So, and guys, you do a great job. I really enjoyed this because it's instead of just question after question, it's conversation, and that's what makes a podcast special. Thank you very much.
We try that. Thank you, Mr. Merrill. This was
That
a
is very high
huge,
praise.
huge honor.
And we would also like to thank Ben Veal for setting this up. He was a big help in getting you on the show. And until next week, my friends, you have been counted out.